And USA Today's Sam Amick here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Sam?
Rich, doing great, my friend. Just the athletic these days, but I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to see you here. Then very good. So, Sam, let's start with the story coming out of Houston. All right, is Carmelo done? Is he done in Houston?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, by all appearances, by all indications, it's messy. It's not every day that you see Daryl Morey, their GM, come out and address something publicly like he did yesterday. And to me, it just spoke to the complications that come with having Melo on your team in 2018. I think, because, Daryl is well aware that there's so much respect around the league and the player community for Carmelo, but he's also aware that this is a team that unabashedly in the preseason talked about championship aspirations and that was the bar, that was the goal and nothing less. And so it's desperate times, and obviously they are shaking things up already as they've seen, the Melo thing not work and overall the collective approach not working like we thought it might.
Okay, so as for you said, the respect in the player community, it's not just any players. Dwayne Wade and LeBron have chimed in on Twitter overnight.
Right.
Dwayne Wade with some words basically saying, trying to make my guy, Carmelo Anthony, the fall guy, huh? Man, you all need to stop. That's the easy way out instead of addressing what the real problem. One of your compadres in the NBA Twitter or NBA media world, and Tim Reynolds, said Carmelo deserves better, and both Dwayne Wade and LeBron James retweeted that. What are they saying, Sam? Can you translate that for me?
I mean, I don't know what they're saying because the deserves better part. I don't know. Publicly, you've got the GM out there saying that it's unfair that the media is focusing so much on this. I don't know who. Honestly, I don't think anybody truly deserves blame when it comes to the way it's being handled. I don't think the Rockets are doing anything wrong by realizing that Melo's not playing well and not fitting in well. And I think that, the reality is, and this is, where I'm always guilty of being pragmatic and just trying to understand things. When they didn't bring Trevor Ariza back, is that a bad move in a vacuum? Sure, except that economically, based on where they were at with the luxury tax, you got to tell me that you think Trevor is worth cutting a check that I forget if it was like $60 million, something like that, based on what it would cost the organization. So that was a challenging business decision. Luke Mbamute is the other guy who they lost. He had shoulder problems. I can actually understand why the Rockets did what they did, but it's off the rails now. And now I think the danger for Houston, Rich, is that they've worked for years and years to make sure that NBA stars thought that they were a good place to be and that they did respect the best players in the game. Because as you remember, there was a time when Daryl Morey had this reputation as kind of the emotionless, tough to relate to executive who you didn't necessarily want to play for. He's changed that, and I think right now you're seeing him try to make sure that doesn't, this doesn't change the optics.
Okay, so then what's your best guess who they're referring to? Is it the coach? Is it Harden? I mean, who are they referring to? Is it Morey? Who did Dwayne Wade be referring to?
I can't speak for those guys. I think, honestly, if I'm in their shoes, I think they're just taking up for their guy, and I think they know the optics that it does look like, they're making Melo out to look like the scapegoat. And maybe, if I had to guess, they probably are looking at Daryl. I just don't necessarily agree with them. The D'Antoni thing is obviously really tricky. We all know the backstory that the time in New York didn't go well. And really it seemed like, Mike's coaching career was going to be going down a dark road at that point because of the conflicts that he had with Melo stylistically. He wanted to play him as a stretch four. Melo didn't want to do it. They just didn't mesh well. So I don't know who they're kind of, taking aim at specifically. I just think that these guys are brothers to Melo. They are extremely tight with him. And it's not even just the Banana Boat crew. I just saw Damian Lillard was, saying the same thing, saying you got to keep some respect on Melo's name. But, I don't know. I just think it's hard for those guys to see his name kind of get dragged through the mud like this, but he's not playing well, and he's not the same guy he was a few years ago.
So if he's bought out and sent into free agency, if you will, Sam, can LeBron go and grab his buddy in the same way? I know obviously Tyson Chandler's a much better fit, as we've seen with them not losing since acquiring him.
Right.
What do you think?
I could see it, yeah. I mean, it's funny because I was in the Lakers locker room 2 nights ago when they rolled through Sacramento, and this story was just starting to surface. I even talked to a Lakers official just casually about it and the idea of, what do you think, Melo maybe wearing the purple and gold sometime soon? And, and the conversation didn't go any further than kind of both of us stating the obvious that, that LeBron-Melo connection is front and center. And if not there, then where? Because we've already seen, Magic Johnson's willingness to put as many, characters in that locker room as possible. And Melo in that regard, and I'm not even trying to be flippant with it, but in terms of just taking calculated risks with, players that other places have given up on who you might think still have some value and are worth gambling on, he would fit. And, it would be up to Luke Walton to see, does it fit? Does it fit well? And if it's not fitting well, then you got to be willing to move on down the line. But I don't know if it's going to be there or somewhere else. I know Brooklyn was mentioned by another reporter as well, but, we shall see.
Well, maybe he and Dwayne Wade could talk about it when the Lakers play the Heat in a couple Sundays.
There you go.
Next Sunday.
There you go.
Never know. Okay, Sam Amick of The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. How close was anybody other than Philadelphia to acquiring Jimmy Butler? How did that trade go down, best you can tell?
Not very close. The New Orleans thing that kind of, that we learned late in the process was interesting, but it didn't involve Drew Holiday, which, the Minnesota certainly wishes that it would have, and I think maybe the Pelicans get the deal done if they put Drew on the table. But, that obviously was not something they wanted to do. Houston, in the end, has the strong opinion. I mean, they are involved in everything all the time. If there's a star player, they are pursuing him. But as they reflected on, their inability to get Jimmy, they definitely feel like they were used as leverage when it comes to the talks between Philly and Minnesota. And, and that's just kind of how the game is played. And so they put the 4 first-rounders on the table. That wasn't real appealing to Glenn Taylor, the Wolves owner, for obvious reasons. You're talking about picks very late in the process because everybody, thought that the Rockets were going to keep winning games. Also, other scenarios with Eric Gordon and Nene and a couple of firsts that were part of the process. But this Philly package, I really do think they did okay. You know what I mean? The T-Wolves, adding Saric, adding Covington, I think they fit better than, some of the other names that were part of the discussion. But Philly was the team that was laying in the weeds. They had pulled out of it weeks and weeks ago. And as of Wednesday, I was told essentially kind of put their take it or leave it type offer on the table. And then the Wolves had to think about it. And then, that game against the Kings obviously was a tipping point. It was so ugly, 0-5 road trip. Jimmy's play really inconsistent that night. So many weird vibes around the team, and they kind of, grabbed that deal off the table.
So when it all comes down to it, Sam, with the Warriors tonight taking on the Clippers without Steph and without Draymond Green, who do you think has the best chance in the West to be this year's Rockets to use potentially an injury-marred stretch for the Warriors to leapfrog them in the standings, should that at all be feasible? What do you think?
Right. Well, I mean, the crazy part is that all of a sudden, somebody in the West obviously is going to try and try to take that Rockets role. But the East have, getting a lot more interesting. Maybe the finals will be more compelling than they have been last couple of years. But if I got to pick a team, I'll probably give it to Utah. They've been inconsistent early on, but I love their formula. And that's a team now that with Donovan in his second year, Rudy Gobert, becoming, reigning defensive player of the year. And I love their coaching staff. And, they're going to probably do something at the trade deadline in February too. They've got a very forward-thinking front office. So the Jazz is, if you ask me which kind of programs I trust the most, it's probably Utah.
Interesting.
And, beyond that, there's compelling teams out there. Denver's looked great so far.
Don't forget on Portland.
Bag.
Portland's won 4 in a row, and they come in and take on a Lakers team to try and send the Lakers hurtling back to 500 on Wednesday night.
That part, that I think they can do, and they probably will do. I'm not buying the Lakers yet. It's a decent team. I'm not buying them as being able to push back against Portland. And the Blazers, on the one hand, I give them a ton of credit. I did a long interview with Damian Lillard going into the season where, I always believe in Damian and his fabric and fiber. I just kind of looked at the rest of the roster, and I felt like coming off a sweep against New Orleans in the first round last year, I had a hard time processing that idea that they could really bounce back and be a top-tier team again. And they've done that. They look great. But matchup wise, the Warriors. I mean, the Warriors give everybody fits. The rosters, or the Blazers roster is just not built well, I don't think, in relation to the Warriors. So I don't see them as a Rockets type of threat at all.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.